The girl was selling flowers at the hospital and broke down when she saw the patient's name. It was her father. She sold flowers with her head down and shoes worn through, but she never asked for anything. She just held out the bouquet, as if the scent could speak for her. In the east wing of the hospital, no one knew her name, but everyone knew that sometimes she cried alone in the elevator. That afternoon, the hallway smelled of antiseptic and silence. The girl walked slowly, as if every step weighed too much. The warmth of the wilting flowers in her hands blended with the metallic chill of the air conditioning. She stopped in front of room 214. Her eyes scanned the paper taped to the door. Eduardo Camargo. She dropped the flowers. The dry thud of petals hitting the floor startled the nurse walking behind her, but the girl didn't move. She stood there, frozen, eyes fixed on the name. Her once steady hand started to tremble. A sob slipped out before she could hold it back. Eduardo Camargo, she knew that name. It was the name her mother said with anger, or with pain, or whispered when she thought her daughter was asleep in. The girl's memory. That name always came right before her mother cried, like a secret password that opened the floodgates. She pressed her face against the door, like she wanted to pass through it. And, she cried. For the first time there. Out. Loud, but then? He heard it. Eduardo Camargo, the man inside the room, was sitting upright with difficulty, surrounded by tubes and constant beeping. He had just come out of a complicated surgery after a car accident that nearly killed him. He was reaching for a glass of water when he heard the muffled sound. Crying, soft, a child. He turned his head slowly. The sound was coming from the door. For a second he thought he was hallucinating. Too much morphine, too many sleepless nights. But that sound, that voice, it was far too familiar. He stood up, wincing. The IV tugged at his arm, and pain shot through his ribs, forcing him to pause, gasping. But he made himself reach the door. Each step hurt. Each second pulled him deeper into a past he'd never dared face. On the other side, the girl wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her worn-out blouse. She didn't want to be seen, didn't want to be heard. She just wanted to understand why that name was here, on that door, in that room, so close. "Are you okay?" a deep voice asked. The door creaked open slowly. She froze. The man in front of her was pale, unshaven, and tired-looking. But there was something in his eyes, something that seemed to look right through her, as if he knew her, as if he'd been waiting for her. "You. Who are you?" he whispered, unable to hide his shock. She didn't answer. Took a step back, like she'd made a mistake, wanted to run, wanted to vanish, but there was something he didn't know yet. She was there for a reason, and fate had already closed the door behind her. She didn't say a word. She just ran. The flowers dropped again, this time harder. Some shattered on the cold hospital floor, as if they too couldn't bear the weight of that moment. She bolted down the stairs without looking back. Her worn soles smacked the steps with urgency, but her eyes, they were still fixed on that door. That name, that voice. Upstairs, Eduardo couldn't move. He stood with his hand on the doorknob as silence swallowed the hallway. He tried to make sense of why that girl had cried over him, why his name made her shake. But what hurt most was how much her eyes looked like someone he'd never forgotten. Outside, the girl crouched behind a newspaper stand at the corner. The cold wind cut through her skin, but she didn't care. She was used to it. Her life had always been like that, hard, small, and loud on the inside. She grabbed the bag of leftover flowers, looked at them the way someone looks at a mistake. Her mother always said, "Sell everything, but never sell what you feel. That's yours alone." And still she sold. She sold her time, her gaze, her hope. Sold pieces of herself in every hospital hallway. Since she was 5 years old, that's how it had been. Her father? She never knew him. Grew up hearing her mother tell the same story. He left before he even knew she existed. He had money, had everything, except the courage to stay. At first, the girl thought he was a villain. Then she stopped imagining. Because imagining hurt more than accepting. But there were nights when her mother would cry softly in the corner of the couch, holding a photo frame face down. On those nights she'd hear the name Eduardo. And even without understanding, she knew that sound carried something broken. Now that name had a door, a room, and a face that made her both afraid and hopeful, but at that moment everything collapsed again. Her mother called. "You're late. It's almost 6. Mama, what happened?" She wanted to tell her, wanted to say she found him, that she saw him, that he was alive, but her voice cracked. "It's nothing. I had to run down the stairs." Silence. Her mom didn't. Push. She never did. She knew some wounds can't be forced out, but this time the girl wished she would. Wished she'd open that door. "There's soup ready. Just heat it up. And wait for me for dinner, okay?" She hung up without answering. The sky began to darken, and with it the weight of that discovery started to truly hurt. It wasn't just a name, it was an absence with a face. A hole that now had a voice and graying stubble. Back at the hospital, Eduardo was still staring at the empty hallway. "Dr. Camargo," the nurse asked, pulling him out of his daze. "Are you all right? You look pale." That girl. Who was she? The nurse frowned. "I don't know. She sells flowers here sometimes, never said her name. Want me to call her?" He hesitated, thought about saying yes, thought about chasing after her. But there was an old guilt there. One time hadn't healed. One he never even dared admit to the mirrors in his bathroom, because deep down he knew he'd left something behind many years ago, a young love, a woman who wouldn't follow his ambition, a choice made in the name of success. And now, maybe that girl was the price, but there was still something he didn't know. She had a reason to come back the next day. The next morning, the sky was grayer than usual. It wasn't raining, but the air smelled like pre-rain, that scent that makes everything feel heavier. The girl paused at the corner near the hospital. The flowers in her hands trembled, as if they sensed what she couldn't say. She didn't want to go up, didn't want to see that name again, didn't want that man to look at her with those eyes that knew too much. But something inside her, something small and stubborn, insisted on staying. Just a little longer. She looked at her reflection in the bus stop glass. Messy hair, pale face, her mother's eyes. That girl never knew where she belonged. And now, maybe she did, but she didn't want to accept it, because accepting meant facing everything she went through without him. And everything she went through hurt too much. She remembered her 7th birthday. No cake. Her mum tried to smile but cried when she blew out the candles alone. The girl pretended not to see. Then at 10 she asked for a bike, got flowers, always flowers. Her mum would say, "Flowers are promises that haven't bloomed yet." But all the girl saw was what was missing. Someone to say, "I'm here." Now maybe that man was that someone, or maybe he was nothing at all. Just an echo of a name that hurt. But in that moment, she saw him again. Him. Inside the hospital cafeteria. Sitting alone with a cup of tea in his hands. Eduardo Camargo. The same tired look from the night before. Only now. He was waiting for her. Her heart raced. She turned her head, like she wanted to hide from her own story. But before she could run, she heard her name. "Livia? Livia?" The voice came gently with a hint of surprise at the end. He wasn't sure, but he took the chance. She stopped, just stopped, because that name, spoken like that, it was the first time. She had never heard her name sound that way. She turned. Slowly, he was standing, thinner than he seemed the night before, but steady, and his eyes were locked on her. You're Livia, aren't you?" She nodded, barely. She didn't want to speak. If she did, she might cry again. He took a deep breath. I need to talk to you. Do you have a minute?" She wanted to say no, wanted to disappear, but her legs wouldn't listen. They sat down in silence. The noise of the hospital cafeteria made the world outside feel far away. "Yesterday," he began, voice rough. "You were crying at my door. Why?" She clenched her hands in her lap. The flowers sat beside her, forgotten. "Because I saw your name, Eduardo Camargo." He stayed silent. "That name," she continued softly, "is the one my mother says every night before falling asleep. Like it still hurts. Like something was left unfinished." His eyes filled with something he couldn't name. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the longing for something he never had the courage to live. Your mother. Is it Isabella? She looked at him like she'd just been slapped. How do you know? He smiled through the pain. Because I never forgot. Livia bit her lip. She didn't know if she wanted to cry or scream, because in that moment, everything she didn't want to be true was starting to be confirmed. You left her. I was young, ambitious, a coward. She didn't reply, but her eyes said everything. And you were born afterward? She nodded. Once again, silence settled between them. But there was something he didn't know yet. Livia wasn't just there out of curiosity. She was holding on to a truth, one that would change everything. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit like. He wanted to say more, but didn't know how. She wanted to hear more, but didn't know if she could take it. The cafeteria suddenly felt too small for all that unspoken pain. Livia stood up before the words came. Eduardo reached toward her arm but stopped halfway. She wasn't just a little girl selling flowers anymore. She was his daughter, and he, a stranger who had never been there. She walked to the elevator, jabbing the button in frustration. He stood frozen, like every step she took was another mistake he could never undo. When the doors closed, he caught his own reflection in the window, so different from the young man full of certainty who once left Isabella. So empty. Downstairs, Livia tried to catch her breath, but everything was spinning. His voice, the way he'd said her mother's name, the certainty in his eyes. It all pushed her to a place she had avoided, hope, but then something unexpected happened. The receptionist walked up, holding an envelope. You're the flower girl, right? Livia nodded, surprised. An older gentleman left this for you. He was here yesterday. Said if he saw you, I should give you this. Her hands trembled as she took the envelope. She opened it. Inside was a single sheet of handwritten paper. The handwriting was shaky but steady. Livia, if you're willing to talk, really talk, I'll be in the hospital's inner garden at 5 p.m. I understand if you don't come, but I'll be there. Signed, Eduardo Camargo. She stared at the note like it was a trap. Talk, really talk. Now? She walked home. Forgot the bus. Forgot the world. With every step, her mother's words echoed louder. The nights when Isabella would say your father didn't have the courage to love what he helped create, and now he was there, waiting. Isabella came home tired as always. She dropped her bag on the couch, kicked off her shoes and saw her daughter standing still in the kitchen. What is it? I need to ask you something. Isabella sat down slowly, already tense. The name Eduardo Camargo. Is he really my father? Silence. The woman closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, tears were already there. Yes, Livia sat across from her. He's in the hospital. I saw his name on the door when I was delivering flowers. And then we talked. Her mother went pale. You talked to him? Yes. He called me by name. He knew I was Isabella's daughter. He wrote a note. He wants to see me again. Isabella lowered her head. For a moment she looked like someone else, more fragile, more afraid. He was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, ambitious, handsome. But he didn't know how to love what he couldn't control. When I told him I was pregnant, he said he needed time to think, and he never came back. And now it's too late. For you, maybe. For me? I don't know. Her mother said nothing. At the hospital, the clock struck 4:57 p.m. Eduardo sat on a bench in the inner garden. His palms were sweating. His heart raced. He felt like a boy about to confess to something he couldn't take back. In front of him, the flower beds couldn't drown out the sound of sirens or the sharp smell of medicine. At 5:03 p.m. she appeared, wearing flip-flops and a hoodie holding flowers. Her mother's eyes, but more determined. You came, he said. I still don't know why, she answered, sitting beside him. Maybe because, deep down, you want to know. Know what? The truth. She looked at him with a mix of distrust and hope, but there was something she still didn't know. He was sick, and maybe he didn't have as much time as he looked like he did. I have a question, Livia said, staring at her hands. Eduardo nodded, not sure he wanted to hear it. Why didn't you ever come back? The questions sliced through the air, like a knife. He took a deep breath, looked up at the sky, searching for an excuse that made any sense, because I was weak, and foolish, and scared. I thought I could run away from what I didn't understand. Run from me? Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of birthdays spent in silence, of school parties she never had a father for. Eduardo closed his eyes. It felt like he was standing before the one courtroom he had always avoided. Only now the judge, and it was his daughter. When your mum told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I was just starting my career, full of expectations and pressure. My business partners said a kid would ruin everything, and I let them speak for me. So you chose your name. He looked at her. Her face was steady, but her eyes, they shook. I chose silence. And when I realized what I had lost, it was too late. I tried to come back, but your mum turned me away. Rightfully. And you gave up. Yes. And I've hated myself for that every day since. Livia went quiet. The breeze in the garden stirred the flowers in front of them, but she saw nothing. She was inside herself, hearing words she had waited her whole life to hear. And now, they hurt more than the silence ever did. Do you think I should forgive you? Eduardo hesitated. I don't know, maybe not, but I needed you to know that it wasn't because you weren't wanted. It was because I was too small to understand what it meant to be a father. She bit her lip. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. My mum, she made me strong, but she bled. And I saw it. Even when, she smiled, I saw it. And now you show up like you just got lost on the way? It doesn't work like that. He lowered his head. Every word from her weighed more than any surgery he'd endured, more than the accident, because right there on that hospital bench he understood what had really broken in him. Absence. I didn't come for forgiveness, Livia. I came for truth. If you need to hate me, but I want to know you, even if it's too late, even if it's just for a short time. She lifted her eyes. A short time, he hesitated, but it was time to tell her. The accident revealed a liver condition, serious. It was already there, but I didn't know. Now, I might not have as much time as it seems. The world stopped for a second. She looked at the man in front of her, her father, a stranger with a face so much like hers. And now, sick, fragile, maybe on the edge of leaving, before they'd even had a chance to begin. So that's it? You find me, say all of this, and then you're just going to leave again? I don't want to leave, but this time, I might not have a choice. Livia stood up. But I do have a choice. He looked at her, surprised. And my choice, right now, is to walk away. I don't know how to handle this, not yet. Eduardo wanted to say something, but there wasn't time. She was already walking away. And once again, every step felt like a goodbye. But there was something he still didn't know. She couldn't hate him. And that was what hurt the most. She spent the following days in silence. Woke up, went to sell flowers at the hospital, but avoided the garden, the hallways near room 214, the elevators, anywhere he might be, Isabella noticed. She knew this silence in her daughter was different, heavier, more painful. Did he hurt you? Livia didn't answer. She sat at the table, turning a dry flower between her fingers. Sometimes pain comes in the shape of a hug, her mother said, because remembering someone existed can hurt more than pretending they never did. The girl just nodded, eyes on the window. She wished it was simple, wished the pain were as clear as a no, but it was the confusing kind, like part of her wanted to go back, and the other part screamed, "Don't fall for it again." In the hospital's east wing, Eduardo no longer left his room. He asked not to be transferred, refused visitors. The doctor kept trying to talk about surgery, transplants, waiting lists, but Eduardo only wanted silence. "Mr. Camargo, if you refuse treatment now..." "I've already refused more important things in life, doctor," he answered. His voice dry. This might be irreversible, he didn't respond, he knew that. But there were things more irreversible than organ failure, like a daughter walking away after finally finding you. like time that doesn't rewind. On the third night he wrote a letter. It took him hours. Every sentence felt like tugging on a string tied to his heart. He sealed the envelope with her name, Livia. But then, everything fell apart. The key. Envelope disappeared. No one knew where it had gone. The nurse swore she left it on the table. A trainee said he'd seen it, but maybe someone from cleaning had taken it by mistake. Eduardo yelled, for the first time. The anger was just despair. In disguise, that was my last chance. That was all I had. He cried, not like a man used to swallowing his tears, but like someone who knew deep down he had failed again. Meanwhile, at the bus stop outside the hospital, Livia waited for her usual ride. The sky was heavy. Cars rushed by. A man sat beside. Her sunken eyes, unshaven face, wrinkled lab coat. Are you Eduardo Camargo's daughter? She froze, am I? The man hesitated. He asked me to give you a letter, but someone lost it. I thought you should know because he's not doing well. She looked at him, unsure if she felt anger or pity. Why are you telling me this? Because he's different now. I've worked with him for years. I've never seen Eduardo like that. No mask, just fear. Livia stepped down from the bench. The bus was arriving. She hesitated. Is he going to die? If he doesn't get the transplant in, maybe. She boarded the bus, sat by the window, watched the hospital fade behind her, those walls that held her name, her absence. But there was something he didn't know yet. She carried all the letters she never received inside her, and one of them was starting to rewrite itself. That night the rain finally came, quiet but steady. It tapped on the roof of the modest house where Livia slept fitfully. In the room next door, Isabella read but never turned the page. They were both trapped in the same silence, the kind that comes from a story that never got a proper start. Livia dreamed. She was in the hospital, but not selling flowers. She walked the halls with empty hands. The doors opened on their own. In room 214 there was only an empty bed, and on it, an envelope, soaked from the rain. She woke up with her heart pounding. For the first time, she didn't want it to be just a dream. She got up before sunrise, put on the cleanest shirt she had, tied her hair up quickly, and went. She didn't take flowers, didn't take excuses. The hospital was quieter than usual, maybe because of the hour, maybe because she herself had changed. She climbed the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Each step was a reunion with herself, The East Wing hallway, she stopped in front of room 214. This time, there was no name. Alarmed, she ran to reception. The patient in room 214, Eduardo Camargo. The nurse checked the system. He was transferred last night to the hepatology unit. Pre-op room. Livia's blood ran cold. She ran through the corridors, unsure if she was already too late. She found the room. Opened the door slowly. He was there, lying down. IV tubes in his arm, breathing slow, but awake. When he saw her, he smiled. A small smile, but the first real one. You came. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I thought you were gone for good. I tried, she said, sitting beside him, but I couldn't. He reached out with effort. She took his hand. You don't have to say anything, he murmured. Just to stay a while. She stayed. For long minutes they said nothing. The sound of the monitor was the only noise. But in that silence, there was more spoken than in all their previous conversations. Livia took a deep breath. I dreamed about you last night in the hospital. You weren't there anymore. And I found an envelope soaked in rain. I think it was your letter. He closed his eyes. I wrote it, but it disappeared. Then write it now, she said. With words, and with whatever time you've got left. He smiled, almost cried. Do you forgive me? I don't know if it's forgiveness, but it's the desire to try. He squeezed her hand. You look so much like your mother, she smiled. She says I look like you, especially when I'm being stubborn. They laughed. Quiet laughter, but real, as if something new had begun or something old had been reborn. But then suddenly he shut his eyes tightly. A spasm. The monitor beeped. Livia jumped up, panicked. "Nurse!" The team rushed in. She was pulled from the room. Her heart raced like never before. She sat on the floor in the hallway, eyes fixed on the closed door. But there was something she still didn't know. That scare wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a choice that would change everything. The scare passed. Eduardo pulled through. The doctors said it was an expected reaction, the body responding to stronger medications. But Livia couldn't shake the sound of that alarm, the beeping, his body curling as if it might disappear in front of her. She started visiting him every day. At first she brought only flowers. Then she began bringing stories. She'd tell him little things. An old woman who cried when she bought a rose. A boy who traded a toy for a sunflower. Eduardo listened like each story was a chapter from a book he'd waited his whole life to read. "Why did you never stop selling flowers?" he asked one day. "Because it's what was left. My mum used to sell them too. When she got pregnant, the customers vanished. She came back with you in her belly, taught me everything. How to keep the petals from wilting. How to smile even when no one looks." He looked down. "I should have been there. It doesn't matter to say that now." "I know. But maybe there's still time to be here now." She smiled but said nothing. They started walking the halls together, slowly. He, with the IV stand beside him. She, with her flowers in a makeshift basket. Patients smiled when they saw the two of them. An elderly man once said, "It's beautiful to see a father and daughter taking care of each other like that." Livia didn't correct him. In the cafeteria, they drank tea together. She began bringing childhood photos, a small photo album, just a few pages, but each picture was a slice of time. Eduardo watched her grow in silence. And it hurt. But now the hurt was different. It hurt with gratitude. Gratitude that he was still here to see it. "Did you like to draw?" he asked, pointing at a photo of her painting a wall with finger paint. "I wanted to be an illustrator. But then, the world got too expensive. The world's always been expensive. But dreams, they're free. Promise. Me, you won't forget that?" She nodded, but there were tears held back in that nod. That week he was added to the urgent transplant list. The doctor explained the risks. It was delicate. The chances were good, but not guaranteed. "If I don't make it out of surgery," Eduardo began. "Don't start," she cut him off. "I have to. If I don't make it, I want you to keep the apartment. And whatever else is in my name, I've already left instructions," she cried. "You can't make up for a whole life with a set of keys. I'm not trying to. I just want you to know that if I fail, I try to leave one less burden behind." She got up and walked out. She went to the hospital chapel, alone. For the first time in years, she prayed. Not for a miracle, but for time, just a little more time. On the way out, she ran into her mother. Isabella was holding a flower. They looked at each other. No hug. They didn't need one. "I heard he's having surgery." "Yeah, in 2 days." Isabella took a deep breath. "Are you scared?" "I am. But for the first time, I also feel hopeful." Her mother nodded. "He hurt you, Livia, but if he's really changed, then maybe his biggest victory is that you came back." On the morning of the surgery, she waited for him at the OR door. "If you don't come back," she said, eyes brimming with tears, "I'll come here every day with a flower until I understand that forgiving hurts less than forgetting." He squeezed her hand, tight, like someone making a promise to return. But there was something she didn't know yet. That very morning, a compatible donor had been confirmed. The time was now, and the chance was 1 in a million. The gurney rolled through the hospital's bright hallways in an eerie silence, as if even the usual sounds, the beeps, the footsteps, the murmurs, respected that moment. Eduardo kept his eyes open, fixed on the ceiling, memorizing every crack, every light. As if trying to trace a map home, should life offer him a second chance. Livia walked beside him, hand in hand, up to where the protocols allowed. "It's going to be okay," she said, but her voice cracked at the end, because even she didn't fully believe it, and because love is that, hoping until it hurts, even with no guarantees. At the surgical wing door, she was stopped. He looked at her one last time before going in. "If I come back, I want you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Even the sad parts," she nodded. But every part of her wanted it to be over already. The door closed, and with it the last 20 years. Hours passed. Livia couldn't sit still. She paced the hallway, hands freezing, eyes dry from so much waiting. Isabella arrived with a water bottle and a blanket. "He's going to make it, you think?" "I don't know, but I hope. And if he does, I'll look him in the eye. Not as the woman he left behind, but as the mother of the girl he almost lost. And if he doesn't?" Her mom took a deep breath. "We survive. But this time the pain would feel different." Inside the OR, everything was technically quiet. Hearts beat beneath monitors. Machines beeped rhythmically. Doctors exchanged short clinical commands. Eduardo was unconscious, but it felt like he was fighting. Like even sedated, his body screamed, "I'm not done yet." Hours later, one of the OR lights turned off. A doctor stepped out. Livia jumped to her feet, ran to him. "Doctor," he hesitated before speaking, then smiled. "The surgery was a success. He's under observation now. But he made it." Livia collapsed into a chair. Her legs gave out. She cried harder than she had since childhood. Isabella held her. Mother and daughter wept together. Not just in relief, but for what could have been lost forever. 3 days later, Eduardo opened his eyes. The light bothered him. His mouth was dry, but there by the bed was her, Livia. "Sleep, Dad, I'm here." That word echoed inside him. "Dad," as if it had been spoken for the first time, and he smiled. Weak but whole, she held his hand. "You came back," he whispered. "I promised, didn't I?" She nodded. "So, now what?" He closed his eyes. "Now you tell me everything. From the beginning." She took a deep breath, looked out the window. The sun was rising. "When I was little, I used to think my dad was a hero who got lost in a forest, and every time I sold a flower, I believed a butterfly would carry it to him." He cried. She went on. "Then, I stopped believing. I thought you were just another painful name, but now I get it. Even painful names can be rewritten. Will you give me that chance?" "I already did. Now it's up to you to write the rest." But there was something she didn't know yet. His recovery would be long, but he'd live. And what they would build from that point forward, no one could erase. Days passed, but they weren't the same days anymore. Eduardo stayed at the hospital, still recovering. His steps were slow, his voice faint, but something inside him had shifted. Something no surgery, machine, or medication could explain. A kind of life he had never known. A life with a name, a voice, and a pair of eyes. Livia. She visited every day, even when school called, even when exhaustion pressed. She didn't bring flowers anymore. She brought presents, stories, silence, because he needed that too. Someone who saw him, not just stood around him. "You know what the best part of all this is?" she asked one afternoon, changing the water in a glass. "The tasteless food?" He joked. She laughed. "No. It's that for the first time I'm not the girl who sells flowers." He smiled. Still pale, but alive. "And I'm no longer the man who runs from everything." "Nope. Now you're just a guy with a new liver and a ton of emotional debt to pay off. With interest, with affection. That's more expensive." The following week he was discharged. Livia waited at the door, same old flower basket, only now empty. No more need to carry what no longer hurt. They walked together to the hospital car. Eduardo still used a cane, but refused help to get in. "Dignity," he said, striking a pose. "Even with a limp." "You're still impossible," she replied, smiling. At Isabella's house, the atmosphere was awkward at first. 3 worlds trying to fit together again, gently, without cracking the edges. Isabella opened the door. She looked different. No longer wounded, just careful. "Welcome," she said. "No drama. Thank you for letting me in. I let you in for Livia, but maybe also for me. In the days that followed, Eduardo slept in the guest room, woke early, helped with breakfast, tried to learn the neighbors' names. He didn't want to be a guest. He wanted finally to be a father, a presence, something. Livia noticed. She started writing a journal, called it Our Book. She recorded the days, the progress, the inside jokes, the shared silences. "Is this book going to have a happy ending?" he asked. "I don't know, but it'll be honest. And that's already a lot." One day, she took her dad back to the old flower stand, the same one where she used to sell everything, even when no one bought. "This is where I recognized you for the first time," she said, "and this is where you gave me my life back," he replied. She placed a flower in his hand. "Now it's your turn to give it away." He walked up to an older woman sitting on a bench, offered the flower with a smile. From someone who learned the hard way what really matters, the woman smiled, took the flower. Eduardo looked at his daughter. Her eyes said it all, but there was something he still didn't know. Livia kept one last letter, one she'd written for him when she thought she'd never find him. Maybe one day she'd give it to him, or maybe she wouldn't need to anymore. Because now every day with him was better than any letter ever could be. And that morning, with no flowers in her hands, she finally understood. Love, when it finds its way back, doesn't need to apologize. It just needs to stay. Thank you for staying with us until the end. But don't go just yet. Right next. To this screen is another powerful story waiting for you. Click, subscribe to the channel and share this with someone who needs it. I'll be waiting for you there.